It's still coming on. Okay.
I know we see the little indicator right before it says it
Okay.
is.
So we are live.
Perfect. I will call this meeting to order. We are calling the meeting to order for the January 14th meeting of the Salem Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. My name is Dylan McDowell and I'm chair. And let's do our roll call. Mickey Varney.
Present.
Alan Alexander. Alan, we can't hear you.
I'm here.
All right, perfect. Tony Cato.
I'm here.
Woody Dukes.
Present.
Dave Friedenmaker.
Present.
Keith Norris.
Present.
And Paul Rice and his dog. Wonderful. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to our first meeting of 2021. Looking forward to a good conversation today. We have a fairly light agenda compared to what it's been in recent months, but excited to see what we have to hear. So let's not forget to approve the minutes this time, like we forgot a little bit last time towards mid-meeting. So let's start off with that. Does anyone have any adjustments to the minutes or changes after reviewing? Hearing none. Oh, Keith, do you have a change?
No, I was going to move to approve the minutes from the December 10th, 2020 meeting.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second it. Either way.
Perfect. You know, I think for the minutes, how do people feel if we start doing that? All in favor, say aye. And for things like this, I saw City Council started using that approach. So I'd be comfortable with that. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. And we can, for bigger votes, we can do roll call, but I figure for these smaller ones, we can do the voice votes.
Hey, Dylan.
Yes.
Just briefly, I wanted to introduce Kimberly Rutherford. She is taking minutes for us tonight.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Kimberly. Well, perfect. Let's go into our public comment period. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review. We had two pieces of written comment in regards to the Pringle Creek Trail, which we'll talk about later. And then we also have one verbal comment from Betsy Belshaw. So Betsy, I just saw you pop on. If you want to give us a comment, you have 3 minutes, please. Betsy, we can't hear you yet. If you want to unmute and turn your video back on.
Dylan, you may have to unmute her. Yeah.
Woody, we're getting some background noise from you.
You were there for a second, Betsy. Okay. See, I'm doing the ask to unmute, hopefully. Okay, you're unmuted now.
No. Betsy, try hitting your space bar. That might help. Click and hold your space bar.
Did we disable this option to unmute for her to unmute herself?
It says you cannot unmute yourself because the host has muted me.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Yep. She was
I'm
unmuted
sorry.
there for a minute.
Okay. Yeah.
Back. Sorry about that, Betsy.
Mitch, can you help with that?
I think I'm doing the ask to unmute, but perhaps many of us are, and it's remuting her.
Mm-hmm. It's hard to say. Let's see. For the short term, Tony, you could just make her a co-host and then she'll have more control over it.
Well, I just checked to allow her to unmute. So try it now, Betsy. Okay, let's make her a co-host.
Okay, Betsy, you're a co-host now, so you should be able to unmute and show your video.
Okay.
While we're getting that figured out, I see we have a couple other people in the meeting that are not associated with the board. So if you're here for public comment, we will have a chance for that in just a second. I think if you would like to put your name in the chat, if you'd like to be recognized for public comment. Otherwise, if you're just participating, that's all right as well. And Mitch, the chat is open to the public as well. Is that correct? Or is that only for co-hosts under the settings you have?
Let me check. Everyone publicly is what it is set to.
Okay, great. So let's see. I'm wondering if Betsy should leave the meeting and rejoin perhaps, and then we can make her a co-host from the start, or if there's other recommendations you have, Mitch, to make sure we can hear her comment.
Yeah, it should just be settings it on her computer's end at this point. So Betsy, you might go ahead and try to leave and rejoin, and just make sure you join with computer audio. When you'll get that little prompt to do that, and we'll see if we can get you back into where you can speak, if you're able to hear us. Well, we got a video now.
Okay.
And there's audio.
There she is.
Hey, there we go.
Now it went away again. This is 2021, right?
Betsy, you're still muted. There it is.
There
We're
it is.
there.
Number 3, we'll try again. Okay, as I said, I still want to compliment you on taking public testimony at the beginning of your meeting. The city council waits till the end, and sometimes I can't last till 1 o'clock in the morning. So thank you and congratulations for doing it at the beginning. I'm here because I have sent a memo to the city council asking for funding for an additional park ranger. And I was to testify on Monday, but I never made it, but I will try the next time. And I'm here to ask you if and when it comes before the budget committee, because I intend to push it, if you would back me up and say that you approve this, but it doesn't have to be done today because I gather can't do that until April. So I'm here just to inform you of what my plan is and go from there.
Thank you so much, Betsy. Would you like to add any more detail about the proposal you have? I haven't had a chance to review it. So would it be a park ranger for certain parks in particular?
No, we have one park ranger who is now permitted to cover all the parks. I'm proposing one additional park ranger to be available to 46 parks. We now have one set of eyeballs of a park ranger in parks. He cannot cover 46 parks. And so I'm asking for an additional, and they would work together to cover the parks as necessary.
That makes sense. Wonderful. Are there any other comments or questions from board members?
Dylan, I would just like to add that Betsy Belshaw has been president of the Parks Foundation for, I think, for many, many years. And she's also head of the Minnow Brown Island Park Park Patrol. And Betsy, anything else you want to add, just to let some of our newer members know a little bit about you and your background?
I think I should point out that the Park Patrol has been in Minnow Brown Park for 20 years. Do you believe that? And so we are familiar with the problems that have developed, both in regard to homeless campers, but also in regard to what's happening and has happened in city parks in the last few weeks. And we want to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on, and my crew is aware that they should watch whenever they're in a park to make sure nothing untoward is happening.
Thank you for that. And in terms of the park ranger, we did submit a letter in support of expanding the ranger's duty. And I know at least I definitely agree that we could use some more park rangers considering the number of properties we have. So
Right. Yeah, I would like to go for 6 or 12. I'll be lucky if I get one.
we have to start somewhere, right?
Right. Keep pushing.
Mickey, did you have your hand raised? Did you? Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, Alan.
I'd also like to comment and compliment Betsy. She also was an integral part of getting the first park ranger approved. She worked tirelessly and twisted a lot of arms to get that approved in the city budget.
Thank you, Ellen.
Well, thank you so much for everything you're doing for the community, Betsy, and thank you for coming out today to share that insight with us. And please let us know as this moves forward and how we can be of assistance.
Yes, I will keep you informed as time passes. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, wonderful. So moving it on, I do not see anything in the chat. Was there anyone else that we missed that had public comment? Tony, I don't think you had any more requests, correct?
No, not to speak verbally.
Okay. Well, wonderful. Let us continue through our agenda then. The next step is the election of officers. So as we discussed last time, nominations are open. We do have a chance. If there's anyone that would like to throw their name in the ring right now, we can do that. Otherwise, I know last time there was that I said that I was planning to hope to continue as chair or to put my name in for that. And Mickey, I think you were planning to run for vice chair again. I didn't know if
Yes.
there's anyone else that would like to run for a position. Yes, Alan. Oh, Alan, you're muted.
I'm do that so you don't hear my background noise. As I said last month, I support the slate of officers we have, and I would move that we accept that slate to move forward for officers for 2021.
I second that motion.
All right, we have a second. Any further discussion on the motion at hand for myself to remain as chair and Mickey to remain as vice chair? Well, we will go through and do a quick roll call vote then, just for proper dotting our I's, crossing our T's. Mickey Varney,
Aye.
Alan Alexander,
Aye.
Tony Cato,
Aye.
Woody Dukes. Did we lose Woody? We may have lost him. Dave Friedenmaker,
Aye.
Keith Norris,
Aye.
Paul Reitz,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. So congratulations, Mickey, and thank you all for continuing to let us lead and work with all of you as chair and vice chair of the committee, the board.
Thank you for being such good leaders.
Thank you.
Hopefully we get Woody back here soon. I know he is out on the Oregon coast. Sometimes the internet connection can be a little spotty. He's currently right near where I grew up, actually, so it's been fun to hear him talk about that. Okay, well, let's move in. We have Julie Warnicki from the city, Transportation Planning Manager, to talk about a letter of support.
Good evening. So I am here seeking a letter of support for the Oregon Community Paths Program, and I'm going to go ahead and attempt to share my screen. Let's see here. Okay, can you guys see that?
Very clear, thank you.
Okay, so this is a graphic that is newer than the one that I included in the report to you. The Oregon Community Paths Program is a new grant program that was just announced this fall through ODOT. Its purpose is to fund regional recreational trails and critical transportation connections. We reviewed the projects that we have both in the transportation system plan and in the parks system master plan, and identified this as the best candidate project for the funding program. And this would be to complete the path connection that is along Pringle Creek, goes to Civic Center, and then there's a gap before you get over to Riverfront Park. As you probably are aware, about a year ago, we completed the phase 1 of this project, which was daylighting the creek, doing creek restoration, and then putting in the bench for where this trail connection would go. The trail would connect, right now there's 2 hanging bridges underneath the Commercial Street Bridge. So there would be a connection between those 2 hanging bridges, also hanging, to get you from the trail that is along the south side of Pringle Creek and Civic Center. You would connect across the creek and then onto this new trail that would then also go underneath the railroad and connect into Riverfront Park near the Eco Earth. There, in the park's master plan, there is also calls for a future access across Pringle Creek, but that would not be part of this project. Let's see, here's another perspective of what the trail might look like with, overlook, the crossing under the railroad, I think is up this direction. Yeah, there's the Eco Earth. I'm going to council on January 25th, seeking their approval for submitting this application. The application deadline is January 31st. They anticipate making awards this summer. Unfortunately, the pot of money is not huge, and the cost of this project is rather large. The total estimated cost, I got a correction since I wrote the report to you. So it's actually fortunately gone down a little bit. Instead of 6 million, it's down to 5.3 million. That does include a hefty 30% contingency, which is recommended by the granting source. The maximum award amount is $4 million. And so we are proposing to submit an application for the entire $4 million. And the matching funds would come from the South Waterfront Urban Renewal area if we were successful. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Thank you, Julie. And it's exciting to know when the cost goes down. It's always good news.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah, Paul, please go ahead.
Yeah, I've been, Julie, I've watched the phase 1 being done and applaud it. I think it's a great project to opening that area up. It's just a whole improvement there. I must admit, I was not having any idea what things cost nowadays, that when I saw the 6 million, it's nice to see that it came down some. One question, you said there's a 30% contingency, and I understand projects like this, you can run into all kinds of things like you did in phase 1 with, I think, some tanks or something. But if let's just say the 30% contingency is not needed, will that reduce the grant amount, or would it reduce the city's contribution?
In this case, it's a little bit hard to know because this particular funding source is a little bit odd in that it has there's a mixture of state and federal funds. And so, but they will assign which you get. You're not going to get state and federal funds. If you get federal funds, your match requirement is 10.27%. If you get state funds, your match requirement is 30%. But you can also go back in time and pull in the expenses you've already paid for. So I'm not exactly sure how they would write these agreements. My guess is that some of it, the reward amount would probably be reduced some, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, those multiple funding sources are complicated. So
yes, yeah. Typically, when we do our normal federal projects, we get reimbursed. So we, say we spend $100, we get reimbursed 89.73% of that. So under that scenario, if the costs did not go all the way to the 5.3 million, then we would probably end up with less than the 4 million in award, but I'm not sure. I mean, chances of success on this round, I think it's going to be a bit of a stretch. I think this is a great project, but it is expensive. So it really depends on what we're competing against. We did invest funds to hiring an engineering firm to develop this estimate to make sure that we were realistic going in, because we did not want to end up in a situation where we, applied for, $2 million and found out it cost $5 million. So, if we're successful this round, that's great. If we're not, we're going to still continue to pursue funding through whatever channels we can identify.
If they award a lesser amount, is this the remaining completion of the project? Can that be phased at all?
I think that the only real thing that could be phased, and I'm not sure that we'd want to, would be the hanging structure under Commercial Street. So you could, make the connection just to the north side, and then people who were wanting to access it would, if they were on the Civic Center side, on the south side of the creek, they would have to come up to the surface, cross, and then come back down and go under. So that could be one way of phasing it. You could probably cut back on some of the, scenic overlook. But the real big expensive items, I mean, the hanging bridge structure is a pretty big one. Probably the biggest single cost is the going under the railroad. You can see here in the graphic, there's a gray shaded area there. That is a requirement for a covering over the bridge to protect pedestrians from debris falling off of the railroad inadvertently. In addition, because of the grades there's not really enough land to put this path on, so it's going to have to be on structure, part of it, underneath. So it's almost like its own little bridge.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, Alan.
Two questions. One, does the city own the right of way for this project already?
The city has an easement for the path. The city is in the process of negotiating to acquire the land fully, but the city does have permission to do this.
Okay. And it is pretty pricey. What's the total length of that pathway?
I'm not sure. I know when I was doing the pre-application, I measured from Commercial Street to the railroad track, and I remember thinking it's like 400 feet. So, the total might be 600 feet, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I understand you said that there's an expensive part that goes under the railroad, but is there a significant cost element in there that just seems up pretty pricey for a 600 feet of trail?
It does. I don't have the cost estimate in front of me. They did try to break it down into, sort of general elements. A lot of it is just, it's a very complicated area. There is, I know mobilization is a big part of this, because it is expected that this site is going to develop before the trail is developed. So we're not going to be able to just, get an easement over this vacant property to come down in. Instead, they're going to have to come down in with small machinery, underneath.
Yeah.
And then take everything out that way as well. So I know that was an added cost. And so you add all these costs, including archaeological, having a monitor there all the time. And then when you start adding the percentages on top of that, it just keeps going up. I was shocked.
Yeah, Keith.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. I think this seems like a great project. I think I answered one of my questions here the longer I stared at the map, but I was going to ask about the A and B trails, and I see where the lines are now on the map highlighting those. And so is the A trail essentially everywhere except for where the B line is for the overlook?
No, it's more, these are just sort of samples, cross sections. And I will say that this is not actually yet the final. There are a couple corrections that need to be made, and one of them actually relates to this A section. So this here, they're going to be correcting this because there is actually a pretty huge retaining wall right here. So it's not this like nice little slope down to the creek.
Okay.
So hopefully before this goes to council, I will be replacing this and also labeling this to make it more clear what's going on there.
Next question I had, and you started to allude to this a little bit, but I think the background information had information on if awarded the grant, there are certain timelines on it. But what is the city's plan in terms of getting started on this and getting it completed? Are we talking, assuming the grant is awarded?
Yeah, I mean, assuming the grant is awarded, I think it was with federal funds, it was 3 years, and with state funds, it was 5 years. My guess is that we're going to be with federal funds, which would then make it for 3 years. So it would be getting going, pretty much immediately. We did have conversations with the Urban Development Department to make sure that they would be able to provide the match. They might have to do some interfund loans, to bridge a gap, because I guess the increment for that urban renewal district is coming in around $440,000 a year. So, so there was acknowledgement it would be aggressive, but we are confident we could do it, assuming we awarded the funds. I will, let's see, well, I don't.
Well, and it seems, based on what you suggested there in terms of getting an easement over that property, sounds like if you're able to jump on it relatively quick, that could maybe be possible. I don't know what the status of the development of that property there, but in terms of cost savings, but okay.
No, I think they're planning to construct. My understanding is they're planning to construct starting this summer.
Okay.
So, I mean, the impression that we got was that we needed to assume we would not have access. Now, I know that they've in the past had plans to construct sooner that then got delayed. So that would definitely be a savings if that happened. You'll also see that there is an access, sort of hard to see, but from the west side of Commercial Street, there is stairs that would come down to the path. So that would be another access point. And there is a requirement for this development site to accommodate that access point.
Wonderful. Mickey, did you have a question?
My question was just answered. I was going to ask about an access from the west side of Commercial.
Yeah, and looks to me like here they're not showing that as being ADA, so I'm not entirely sure.
Well, that's okay.
Anyway.
I had just noticed that up north a little bit, the sidewalk was closed, at least from the drawing that was in our packet, and I was thinking, okay, how does someone on the west side get to this beautiful trail? Okay.
Yeah, so there definitely would be an access, probably somewhat similar to what you see exists today on the east side, where here you have the trail and you have the ADA compliant ramp. That's the part that I'm guessing would not exist because I don't think there's room to put it in with the grades and the development.
That makes sense.
Perfect. Yeah, Keith.
Yeah, just one more question, and I assume the answer is no, but just curious in terms of impacts to the existing paths in Riverfront and by Eco Earth during construction. Are you anticipating any issues there? Are you assuming most of the access for construction will come from the other direction?
I really don't know. I would assume that some would probably end up coming this direction when you're working this way, But yeah, no, I do not know the answer to that. I also want to point out that these illustrations at the bottom, these are just typical type of things. It's not like this wall treatment has been defined. It was just that it was assumed that there would be a desire to have some sort of wall treatment, and then that would get designed with community input during the process.
I guess one question I would have practically is what would make the strongest letter of support in terms, I know you said the grant application is very competitive. So what are there certain things that you've found to be more effective than others? I know probably tying this into the fact that the amphitheater is being completed soon and some of the other development trails, but are there other key points that you would find, you would recommend?
Because of this funding source, it's focused on transportation and trails. I think emphasizing the connections that this would make with all the trail system, both in Wallace Marine Park and in Minto Island Park, you know, by the connections to the Minto Trail and the Union Trail, and then also connection to Bush's Pasture Park, you know, Pringle Creek Park, and then the, you know, so sort of that longer connection aspect would be important. And then, I mean, that's probably the most important. I know that they are also interested in access to critical destinations. So, you know, you think about Riverfront Park as a, you know, community destination. Currently, access, you know, from this area is difficult because of the busy streets, as well as the, you know, the closed crosswalk, you know, the state highway. If there's any sort of equity lens that, you know, could be applied in terms of, I don't know, lower income areas, but they actually have, and this application has a new tool that I've never seen before, and I have asked for information on what the math was, but they did a transportation disadvantaged indexed analysis, and they already applied it and told me what our score was. And our score was essentially 1 out of a range between 0 and 2.3. So 2.3 being the best. So we're a little less than half, and I'm trying to get a better understanding of how that score was landed upon. I think it's a mixture of census data and which of course is 10 years old, and you know,
An interesting spectrum, 0 to 2.3.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and our score was not actually 1; it was like 0.99, a whole bunch of different digits. You know, so
interesting.
And unfortunately, well, and that's worth 100 points out of 275 total points. What I don't know is who we're competing against, you know, so if we're competing against other projects that have lower scores, then maybe it doesn't matter. But if we're competing against somebody with a 2.29, then we're probably, you know, we've got problems.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious to hear from the rest of the board, but I feel like this sounds like a really great letter. I know we had 2 letters of support from the community, or 2 comments encouraging us to support this as well. Noting timelines, this is due, Julie, you said January 31st, correct?
Yes.
So we won't be able to meet again as SPRAB to approve a letter. So I think what we'll have to do is designate 1 or 2 of us to write and submit the letter on our behalf, following up on these points, which I know we've done before as well.
I have a question for Julie. Would this be considered completing the trail? Completing a missing link?
Yes. In my mind, this is completing a missing link in a network.
Would that be important for us to mention in a letter?
Yeah, I think that would, because we have a whole lot of other trails. So even, you know, even though this is actually, you know, relatively short, as Alan mentioned, it's its completion, you know, results in, you know, miles of trails, you know, being accessible for the public. And the purpose, you know, once again, this is a transportation grant, and so there is definitely a, you know, while recreation is important, transportation is also key. So if you think about somebody who maybe lives in West Salem and works at Salem Hospital and, walks or rides their bike, completing this connection would really make that a much safer and more pleasant trip.
Thank you.
And I'll just note, we had the Salem Climate Action Plan Task Force meeting this week, and a big focus is transportation. It's the #1 source of emissions in the city, and it's something that the city is looking at. So I think the more we can talk about these connector trails playing into that long-term investment is really important as well. Keith, were you going to say something? So you came off mute.
I was actually just going to make the comment that Julie made about commuting from West Salem. I think this is a pretty drastic change in terms of the comfort of doing that without a vehicle. And so that seems pretty huge there. So, and then I was going to move that we draft a letter or send a letter in support of this grant application.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Mickey seconds. As part of our discussion, we should probably decide who would like to write the letter, who would volunteer, and I'm happy to assist and work on a draft with somebody, but it's always nice if two of us can put our heads together.
I'm happy to assist with that, Dylan.
Okay, Paul, do you want to join us too? I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, I'm happy to just be another pair of eyes and wordsmithing.
And we're below the quorum issues, so that's nice in terms of having 3 of us work. Alan, did you have something?
I'm just curious, because I'm fairly new, is it common for a sitting city councilor to provide comment about something that they ultimately have to approve?
I found I had
Alan,
a similar question.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Tom Anderson was speaking as a citizen.
Okay. It just seemed so an awkward situation because basically asking for support for something that he's in position to approve. So
I did specifically ask him that question.
okay.
And Alan, perhaps Alan, his take was more if we have a letter from SPRAB in addition to City Council approving it, it just furthers the chances of it.
Well, I understand. It just since they appoint us, it seemed sort of a macabre situation. So anyway, I still support the project, but
yeah.
I will add that I'm also going to Can Do their neighborhood meeting next week to request a letter of support from them.
Wonderful. So the motion before us, Keith, Paul, and I will work on a letter that we'll submit prior to the January 31st deadline. Any further discussion before we move to vote? Yeah, Mickey.
Well, I just wanted to say, I think it's wonderful. It encourages walking and biking and pedestrian traffic. And another thing that I thought would be important to mention is the fact that this path connection is in 3 existing plans right now, and it's part of it. I think it's important to include that.
That's a very good point. Wonderful. Any further discussion before we move to a vote? Okay, we'll do a quick roll call. Mickey Varney?
Aye.
Alan Alexander?
aye.
Tony Cato? Woody Dukes?
Aye.
Dave Frydenmaker?
Aye.
Keith Norris?
Hi.
Paul Rice?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. So Julie, thank you so much for that great presentation. We'll work on a letter and send that your way.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, that is exciting. I agree. It would be wonderful to have that path connected. Mickey, as you pointed out, just completing so many different plans that the city is working on, or really bolstering those plans. So Tony, let's move into our work plan. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review that document. And Tony, I don't know if you want to walk through key points on it or make any comments as we start to look at it.
Let me get that brought up here. Can you see the screen or see the work plan?
Yes, it's we can also see a lot of the header on your document, so you'll need to scroll around a little bit or full screen it. That's better.
Okay. Okay, let's scroll down here. Or up. So some of these timelines, the little X's, which is, kind of approximation of where they'll fall on the agenda. These really aren't confirmed yet. What I'd really like to hear from the board is your thoughts on what is already existing on the work plan, and if you have anything else that you think should be added.
Well, one that
I'm
I
sorry,
would,
Tony, did you just ask things that should be added to the whole work plan, or were you asking about a specific part?
Just if there's something you think should be added to the work plan that we should make room for on the agenda at certain time, a certain time during the year or certain times.
Okay. I have a couple, but I think I cut off Dylan, so I'll step
just a
back.
quick clarification. We've had the retreat the last couple of years that I know has been, it was very successful my first year, and then obviously we had to be remote. But I see this as board strategic planning at the top in the board development. Is that the same thing, or is that something else?
The board strategic planning is basically, we had our our non-retreat in 2020. So that's your strategic planning. Is that what you're talking about here?
Yeah, it's just clear. So that would be the same as doing a retreat, if we can fit that in.
Yes.
Perfect. I think it'd be great for us to do that, but obviously less COVID dependent. And if not, we can try and find some virtual means of doing so like we did this year as well. Keith, did you want to share your comments?
Yeah, I think, and I was trying to make sure it wasn't in here anywhere, but one of the things I thought of as I was scrolling further down through the packet earlier this week was there were a number of park master plans that are coming up. It sounded like later this year will be completed. And so just having those indicated on here and kind of when we might expect that the board will be asked to look at those as part of that master planning process.
Yeah, we'll think about that, how that might work on the work plan in general. Those usually come up according to the schedule of the plan, which sometimes we don't necessarily know, but we could add an item here, master planning. And then as we are expecting to present to the board, we could, put a little X in a certain month, but it really depends on how our outreach goes before we come to SPRAB. We have a general idea of when we'll come to the board. But that we could do that. Patricia might want to chime in on that, but let me think about that a little bit when we come back in February.
That's perfectly fine. Yeah, it was just something I figured. Well, I mean, having not been through a master plan review from the board as a relatively new board member, but I'm not sure how it would work, but just figured something that the board will be asked to take a look at as part of that. The other thing I had was probably more on the committee was where I was thinking about it, but was thinking back to the Salem presentation we had, I believe at the last meeting, and comments from there about how that Salem planning will lead into a comprehensive master plan review for the parks. And I think what we had talked about last time is that was probably still a year and a half away, but I couldn't remember if there would be appropriate prep work for that by SPRAB via a committee this year to set up for that comprehensive planning process and our involvement in it. So
I wouldn't anticipate this year. When we do start down that road, at some point we'll have an advisory committee and SPRAB, or one or two or three members of SPRAB may be on that committee.
Sounds good. Those are the only ideas I had. Otherwise, looks good.
One note I'll make for Keith is currently on the climate action plan as the alternate, and that's not reflected on the committees. So we'll want to add his name there.
Okay.
Alan, go ahead.
Is there some particular reason? I notice there's no little X's by CIP discussion and budget, proposed budget.
I haven't confirmed those dates. The CIP discussion, we were just kind of early in the process. So it could possibly be, and again, if Patricia wants to chime in the spring, we'll come to you to discuss the CIP, or we may even have Tammy Stars, our staff person that manages the CIP discussions and the CIP, maybe come in and give you an overview of the process. Is kind of what I'm thinking. So she could possibly come February, March. The CIP is usually adopted sometime in May.
I understand. It's just that both of those are pretty critical elements in the overall programs that go forth. And so, and if we don't understand what's coming in from a proposed budget standpoint, as well as CIP discussions, it sort of leaves us in the dark.
This is Patricia. We're going to have Tammy Stars come in March to the SPRAD meeting to give an overview. Jennifer and I are working on the CIP right now, so we haven't nailed anything down at this point, and we probably won't have it by February either. We kind of have a working draft right now. So March is when it'll come to SPRAD.
Well, anytime's fine, just as long as we get around to doing it.
Yeah.
One question I had for the document, I see it says possible cancellation for the November 11th meeting because of the holiday. Is that something where we should look at a different meeting time that month, or has that ever happened in the past where we've fallen on that date, and what usually date?
No, not that I can recall. We could look at having another meeting date. Sometimes it gets confusing for folks that are regular attenders, members of the public, so they might miss the meeting if it's held on a different date. But obviously, if it's a holiday, sure, we can certainly look at having a different date for the meeting. We can check in, the month or two prior and see how the schedules work for the board members.
Perfect, thank you. And then were we planning to talk about committee membership this evening as well, or did you want to focus on the main activities first and then move over to that section?
I think we could discuss committees tonight, and yes, definitely.
Great. Well, Alan, I think Alan and Keith, neither of them were here when we went over this last time, and so any committees that they were interested in joining, I don't know if you briefly could just go through. I guess there's the master plans are pretty self-explanatory, but Tony, if you could add more detail on the SPIF application review committee, and then I'm happy to just, with the tree subcommittee, we've talked about that, but that kind of went dormant for the last year, but before we were meeting fairly regularly to really talk about trees on private property and tree code updates. And so hoping to reconvene that in the coming year so we can talk a little bit more about some of the East Salem canopy cover questions that came up during the tree council work session as well. But Tony, if you could talk about SPIF, that'd be great.
Sure. The Salem Park Improvement Fund, or SPIF, is a matching grant that the city's had for quite a number of years. And it's a grant that's available to neighborhood associations to make, minor park improvements. And there is a committee that consists of a Parks Foundation member and 3 members from SPRAB. And you meet twice a year. So there's a letter of intent that the neighborhood submits at I think it's in the fall. And the group gets together at that time and they review the letters of intent. And then there's a decision made whether they can move forward with an application for a grant. And that really depends on, you have parks operations staff there and maybe planning staff just to see if their project's feasible. And then usually an application's due around the end of January. And then the committee gets together and they go through a thorough review and scoring of the applications. And then they award. So sometimes if there isn't quite enough money to dole out for all the applications, then you discuss the different points and the applications and make decisions about funding.
And Tony, we didn't meet this year, if I recall. Is that because of just 2020 being so strange, or was there a different reason for that?
Actually, we
You
did
know,
meet.
Did
I don't, I'm not part of SPIF anymore. That's Jen Keller. And I'm sorry, Jen was unable to make it tonight. She had a neighbor had an emergency. She had to take her to the ER, and that's
no.
where she is right now, assisting her neighbor. So Jennifer could probably better answer what occurred in 2020.
Well,
I
it sounds like
wasn't part of
Alan
it.
part of that.
In fact, I was there as a representative from Parks Foundation. We did in fact meet at the first part of the year before the COVID shutdown, and they approved a good spectrum of projects. And I'm sure board members have been around this a long time. To me, that is the program that gives most bang for the buck of anything the city does. The end result of those dollars the city invests in the SPIF program pay benefits well beyond throughout the parks, throughout the city. It's a great program. It involves the neighborhood associations, and they're usually looking for some kind of match. And so it gets local ownership in those projects. And it's, I think they budget like $60,000, and the city's budget, that's a drop in the bucket, but they get a lot of mileage out of that 60,000.
Mhm.
And Alan, were there any representatives from SPRAB there? Because I'm trying to remember when Alan and I signed up to be on, or sorry, Paul and I signed up to be on this, and I know we didn't attend that meeting, so I'm just trying to remember when that happened.
For some reason, it was a smaller than normal group. But Jennifer Keller, of course, chaired it, and but I think it was maybe in January or early February.
Gotcha. Okay, well, that's really good to know. Thank
The
you.
cycle runs, Dylan, from July, it begins in July. So you might have been part of the committee following that January meeting, is what I'm thinking.
Great.
Anyway.
I look forward to participating this year.
And
Right.
just to speak to the master plans, for those that are new, basically, if you are a committee member on, for instance, Gear Park Master Plan, you would attend what are now, I guess, virtual meetings, but when we held public meetings, you'd attend the public meeting. And then you would participate in that way. Oftentimes you might even be speaking to the public about the park. You report back to the board about what's occurred and just what's ongoing with that master planning process.
And we usually like to have two folks from the board, and so we have an alternate.
Yes. And even on really large plans, it wouldn't hurt maybe even to have a third as well. But, since we have virtual meetings, it makes it a little bit easier to access the information.
So I think we want to now open it up if folks would like to add themselves to some of these committees, or if you're on a committee that you would rather pull yourself off of for the next year, we can do that as well. And so somewhat of an open time here, especially
Dylan,
Keith. Yeah.
I have a question for Patricia regarding Gear Park Master Plan. Would there be, are we at a point where we could still have an additional member join that committee?
Well, Gear is kind of winding up right now, so I don't really see the benefit of adding another person at this point in the process.
And I apologize. I honestly didn't remember that I was the main person for that. But obviously, as Tony mentioned, it's been so virtual that you've been giving us great reports, Patricia. So thank you for that.
I think it was Diana initially. I think it was Diana, and you were the alternate, Dylan. So
that makes more sense. Okay. Well, I'm very relieved to hear that.
yeah.
Yeah, my only comment is being notified of these things, especially with Zoom, they kind of go over my head sometimes that we're actually got a date. So anything that's sent to me that reminds me that on this date, this is going to happen if I'm a part of the committee then.
Well, usually what we do is we ask you to sign up on the website to receive notices so that you're in the loop that way. You get them automatically.
We have all the SPRAB members on the email list. whether you're on the committee or not, to receive emails regarding the master plans. So if you aren't receiving them, we need to check on that.
So are there committees that folks would like to add themselves to? Alan and Keith, you're not currently on any of these, so I want to open it up for either of you first.
Well, I would be happy to serve wherever the need may exist, but I am very familiar with the SPIF program, and my one time of being on that committee, I certainly enjoyed it. What I thought was a very professional approach the staff takes to analyzing these projects. And if it doesn't look right, they can make suggestions on how to make the program work. And I appreciate that. I'm sure the neighbors in the parks appreciate that, those extra efforts also.
All right, and then Keith?
Yeah, I was also going to express interest in the SPIF committee, but I think Tony said 3 people from SPRAD, so happy to step back from that one from now. Yeah, and then like Alan said, happy to help serve wherever it might be most needed on any of the other plannings.
Well, perhaps we could have you as an alternate, a fourth. Tony, let me know if this doesn't work. But I mean, if it's important to have people there in person or virtually in this case, maybe you could be the alternate in case Paul, myself, or Alan couldn't attend at that time.
Alan, are you representing the Salem Parks Foundation though?
I don't know. We haven't assigned that this year. I am currently the vice chair there, and that's the reason I attended it the one, I think, first part of February. But there's a technical question. If I were to serve from the Parks Foundation, and then we could add a third member, but would that still be in violation of the 4 board members, even though you're in a different status?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you're right. That could potentially, yeah.
I don't know. I'm asking because I don't think I've ever seen it come up before. So.
Yeah, it hasn't come up before, but having 4 kind of is getting up there, you know.
Yes.
Okay.
So for the time, Paul, I guess we should ask Paul, would you like to continue being on the SPIF committee for the coming year?
Oh, I'm happy to yield the third position or second position to either Keith or Alan.
Everyone's being very polite tonight. Well, Paul, if you'd like to move to one of the other master plans, then Keith and Alan, you could both serve in that role. And I could also step off of it, although I would be really interested in attending that this year. So if possible, it'd be wonderful to stay on that one. Paul, we need a second on the Woodmansee master plan right now. Is that something you'd be interested in serving?
Oh, yeah, that'd be fine. That'd be fine.
How does that sound for everyone? Okay. Woody, Dave, Mickey, any other changes you'd like to make to your current assignments, or would you like to add yourself to any of them? All right. Well, this sounds great. I will also note that we have the park program facility tour. It's so fun when we get to do that and actually go out and see the parks as a group, and really hoping that mid-year or later this year, if we are in a safe place to do so, that we can coordinate something like that. It's really fun to get out there, especially when we can have our wonderful park staff show us around and show us all the ins and outs of what's been going on throughout the year. Tony, anything else you need from us before we move on from this?
I'll bring it back to you in February and then you can approve it. Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, Tony, you actually, while you have the floor, the next item up is the Parks and Rec fact sheet webpage.
Okay. Boy, I'm slowly getting better at sharing my screen. Okay. I probably shouldn't have said that. Okay, let's see here. Okay, can you see the screen? I hope.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, So just for a little bit of background for our members of the public, last year, I'm not exactly sure when, but sometime last year, the board requested a Parks and Recreation fact sheet. And initially then it was, you know, like a brochure that could be folded and put in a wallet where the board members could pull it out and have some sort of factual information about Parks and Rec that they could share with the public. And this kind of evolved into an online platform, a hub of, kind of everything: parks, recreation, volunteering, tree canopy, a little bit of everything, and some data collection. So what we have here that's in draft form, it's really more informational, has a lot of different links that folks can click on to get more information if they desire. And my plan is to review it with you. We don't have a lot of time, so I won't click on every link unless you request me to do something like that. But my plan is early next week to get a link to you, to the board, and to staff for further review. And then hopefully by February, we can make it public. So with that, we'll roll through here. This is River Road Park, by the way, in the picture.
Tony, if I could just say one thing on this. First off, kudos. This is really incredible. And I know I've had a sneak preview of it when we talked earlier this month. And just for everyone, a little bit more background is that I know for myself, when I've been looking up some of the parks information in the city, some of it's scattered around the different parts of the city webpage. Some of it's non-existent online right now. And so this will be a really great opportunity for us to consolidate that information. And as our different committees and subcommittees produce information, we can put it here and have a place to display information and direct the public. So hopefully this will be really great to streamline how the public engages with our parks.
And I'm presently working with our IT department. Hopefully what we plan to do is some statistics that we can build into our park data that IT manages can just be uploaded and automatically, updated as, periodically, like here, I'll show you, like our number of city parks. So we have 90 parks right now, acreage, 2,300 acres. We wanted to add in miles of trail. We don't have that confirmed yet, but again, these are all numbers that could be built into our, in the background in the data, and then just automatically updated periodically. So we can offer here a couple of different ways to locate a park. This is an interactive park map, and people can click, zoom in, zoom out, find a park, get the address, or they can zoom in a little further and see where it's located. What I have here also, and I'm having trouble navigating on this little screen. I'm going to move this a little bit. Okay. So I've added a link here to the Park Finder app or application on the city webpage, which actually allows for more detailed searching, if you will, or querying to find features of the park, or if somebody wants to know what parks have soccer fields, they can do that on this Park Finder app. This right here is really just a locator.
I don't know if everyone else, I lost your screen just now.
Oh, you did?
Just black for me.
I'm sorry. Let me move it back here. How's that?
There it is. Yep.
Okay. I was trying to move it to a larger monitor. Okay. The other option, if someone doesn't want to navigate this screen here, we have what's called a Find a Park web page, where there's just a list of parks alphabetically, and then also there's a list grouped by area. And then also on this Find a Park page, there's a list of parks that have reservable facilities. And then as we scroll through here, you'll see that I kind of added these little fact tidbits, and I just called them, did you know? And I was trying to figure out how to incorporate the information about the public library and their Explorer backpacks.
That's
so
great.
I just incorporated it here. They aren't available right now because of the reconstruction with the library, but I have a link to the library. And then as soon as the, the construction's completed, we can update this and folks will be able to access those. And then we have recreation programming. So we have links to the programming guide when that's available, and Softball USA website for softball and kickball league information. We have running and walking event page also on the city website. And then again, just some little facts about number of people that participate. I plan to update this as these are 2019 numbers. We added in a little bit about Center 50 Plus. I'm working with the director there, hoping to add just a little bit more information to draw people in to those programs. How to reserve a facility. So that takes you to the reservation site with the forms and information about permits. And then we have a tree canopy. So we have a lot of kind of interesting facts about tree canopy and the benefits to the community. And then this link here, learn more about Salem's tree canopy, takes you to the Community Forestry Strategic Plan webpage. This here you can click on and just get a larger view. And then you can also view this brochure front and back in English and Spanish by clicking on these links. And then scrolling through, we have a little bit about how our park classification system works, why we classify parks the way that we do, and the 7 park classifications, a little bit about each one, and then the number of parks of, those classifications. These are little statistic cards. So, if we add a park and it's a neighborhood park, this number will just automatically bump up to 48. That's how that works. And then volunteering, a little bit about volunteering, and then a button where we want them to go to sign up, where they have the forms and contact information for our park volunteer coordinator. A little bit about Friends of Trees. This link takes you to the Friends of Trees planting in Salem and how to sign up. And a little picture there. And then there's information here about the Park Advisory Board, mission statement, vision. This is a link to the board's webpage. And then this is a link to the city website on how to apply for a board or a commission seat. And then contact information. And then I wanted to note across the top on the header, this here just takes you to the site, back to the site because I have another table here. Parks and Recreation Advisory Board webpage, City of Salem website. This here is Park and Rec data. This is a table I was kind of experimenting with. So these are park facility numbers. So we have 8 tennis courts in our system, 3 off-leash dog parks. These are statistics based on our data that we have that IT collects for us. But it doesn't take you to, it doesn't list the parks. They aren't links. It's just strictly number of facilities. If someone wanted to know how many half-court basketball courts do we have? Oh, 19. But if they go to that Park Finder application, that's where they can query and find out where those basketball courts are. So still kind of working through this page a little bit. I've talked to IT. They can build something at some point on, making this more interactive. So that's something we can look at down the road. These are the little tidbits of numbers I had back on the other page. And these are numbers that can be put into our park data and updated on a periodic basis. So working on getting that done too.
This looks really good, Tony. Thank you for all your work on this.
Yeah, thank you. Then lastly, I don't know if you can see, I can't see this because I have people's pictures in front of it, but this is the Parks and Activities page on the website. And this is where I plan to put the link to the Parks and Rec information hub here, and then on our park planning and development page, and then our recreation pages, or maybe just have a little box here that has a link to it. I haven't quite figured that part out, but we'll have links where people can find that page and find that information. And that's it.
Say, Tony,
Yes.
I noticed you said there were 90 parks in Salem, and then you said the type of parks, but the numbers in the type of parks added up to 70 and not 90. So is there just some parks?
No, they actually add up to 88. We have 88 parks, and then we just acquired 2 parks. So they haven't been built into the data yet. So we have Reed Road Park, which is a neighborhood park, and we have the property on 23rd and D, the Oregon State Hospital property, and those 2 haven't been added in yet.
Oh,
So,
I noticed the same thing, but there was another row. It was 2 rows of data. So I think there was another row that had more numbers under it that she scrolled past quickly.
yeah. Yeah, there's technically 88. Well, technically it's 90, but those 2 haven't made it into the data yet.
I think it looked great. I loved it.
Thank you.
That was really well done.
Well, I'll get a link out to you and then you can explore it, and please let me know of any questions or, additions.
Yeah. Mickey, do you have some comments?
Oh, well, I wanted to say I need to investigate it a little more, the find a park feature, but probably the 3 most common questions I get from individuals new to the area is, where can I find a dog park? Where can I find the pickleball courts? Where can I find a skate park? Or, so it's nice that they have a means to identify parks that have some of those facilities. I guess one thing I wanted to say, with seniors and wellness, I don't know what we have in individual parks that are focused more on seniors and wellness. And that might be something else to add to that seniors and wellness part.
Say that again. I'm sorry, you cut out on me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I would like to incorporate another comment I have gotten from the public, at least at neighborhood association meetings, is more activities or structures or things for seniors in our parks. So if that's another area where find a park, if there are other things that are more for seniors or that seniors might be interested in, you might have that in the find a park portion as well.
Okay, yeah, excellent. Okay.
Great feedback points, Mickey. Thank you. Any other comments broadly before you all get the link next week to investigate further? Well, thank you, Tony. I think this will be great. I know when I was moving here, and I've had some questions too about how many parks Salem has and everything like that. And just having one place to go to find all that information is going to be really nice for all of us, but for everyone else as well.
Thank you.
Great work. All right, let's jump into our information reports. And first up is our Mission Streets Parks Conservancy quarterly report. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review all the documents that were sent to us. And let's make sure Christine has the ability to unmute herself.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Great. Great. Well, it's nice to see you all. And Dylan, you said at the beginning of the meeting that you didn't have a very full agenda, but here it is, 6:46, and you're still moving right along.
Yep. We managed to keep ourselves busy.
Yeah, you do. And you keep me amused. So thank you for that. We had a busy final quarter of 2020. We're glad, like everyone else, to see the door close on that year. And I just wanted to hit a couple of the high points from our report. One of the really interesting things that we did this last year was a bunch of the volunteers in our group who have expertise in garden design or expertise in horticulture took a tour of the northwest corner of the park where we do our work and really did a hard look at all of the planting beds with the idea in mind that those would be refurbished and replenished and just spiffed up. And they put a lot of plants in there this fall after the rain started up. We were up to our knee pads in mud, getting in bulbs and new perennials and a lot of beautiful shrubs and whatnot. So this next bloom season should be really, really special in Bush Park, I think. Another thing that we spent some work on is there's basically an abandoned, I would call it, a very unused area just to the south of the Conservancy. And Woody, I know you know where that is. We used to refer to it as the Nursery Garden because several years ago, the gardener in charge of Bush Park used to put nursery stock in there to hold it and kind of hide it because it was out of the way. And we've taken a look at that and envisioned developing sort of an intimate little garden there with nice benches, seating for two. You could go in there with your sweetie and just have a nice little tete-a-tete. And we've created a draft concept plan for what something like that might look like, and given that to Patricia Farrell, we're hoping that after the cultural landscape management plan is completed, that maybe that little project and working through that little project could be an early opportunity to see how the cultural landscape management plan actually works on a proposal. So that's pretty exciting, I think. And the last thing I want to tell you is that we had a debrief meeting with Jennifer Keller and Brian Smith and Amanda Sitter, who works at Brian and Amanda both work at Bush Park, and Jennifer is, well, you know, Jennifer. And we had a debrief meeting just to see how communications had worked during the 2020 gardening season and what, if anything, we needed to do to improve things, to make things work even better, and what we were looking forward to down the road in 2021. And I think that meeting was pretty successful. It identified some glitchy little things where we were kind of talking crosswise with each other and, you know, unnecessarily taking up time from some of the staff park. Our group was taking up time from them unnecessarily. And so we're working toward improving those communications even further. And I'm feeling very, very good about where we're at right now. So that's my report. I'm very happy to take questions from anybody.
Thank you so much, Christine. Yeah, Mickey, go ahead.
I had a question about the plant sale because I remember it didn't occur this past year. Is there any discussion about possibly having it online, or at least a portion of it, so people could order plants and pay for them online and then maybe have a couple of pickup days or something like that? I just didn't know if you had maybe talked about it.
We talked about that last year, Mickey, to see if there was some way we could develop it. And by the time we got, we were in denial, to be honest. We thought we were going to have those plant sales last year, right up until we admitted to ourselves we couldn't. So we're less in denial right now, and we are going to be talking about that. I'm not sure that we have the ability to create the infrastructure necessary for that. I did quite a bit of research, and there were some gardens around the country who did have online plant sales and things like that. And you would be surprised at the amount of online infrastructure that takes, and online payment capacity, and rotating people in to pick up plants, and having things held and then released. And so it's a very daunting idea, and we may try it on a small, sort of like a reduced basis. So it wouldn't be a full bore plant sale like the big plant sales are. It might just be, I don't know, pick out some specialty things like flowering shrubs or something and do a flowering shrub sale online or something like that. I don't know. But if you've got ideas about that, I'd love to hear them. So, but obviously not in this forum.
Okay. No, thank you. I think something like flowers and shrubs, just limiting it would be wonderful.
Okay,
if you could make it, if it can happen. If not, I certainly understand that too.
Well, we have high hopes to be able to be out there in the park by the summertime, selling you all the plants you can cart away.
I hope so.
Wonderful. Any other questions for Christine? Okay, well, thank you so much, Christine. And we also hope you can do the plant sale and that we can all stop by and add to our gardens.
Thanks, Dylan.
All right, well, let's move into our different reports. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review those, so we can just do any questions we have or clarifications. Let's start with our urban forestry report with Mylan. Does anyone have any questions or clarifications for Mylan? Mylan, you make it very easy to read. Oh, Paul, go ahead.
Well, I just part of it was removing some flowering pear trees around the Civic Center. Are they just failing trees?
Yeah, I mean, the species in general is a short-lived species, typically 25 years, and then it just becomes morbid. Can't get nutrients and water and things up to the top of the tree anymore, so they just sort of die from the top down. And I guess these have been dying for a while, and they have weak branch unions, so it's just, it felt like the new construction at the library, it was a good time for us to get in there and do some tree removals when there wasn't activities going on. And just sort of made sense that we remove a bunch of these trees that were sort of on their last leg and get some new trees in there.
Yeah, sounds fine.
Actually, Woody planted those trees. Didn't you, Woody? I don't know what year that might have been.
It was in the early 80s when they were the big thing that came out in the nurseries, that they were just the cat's meow kind of thing.
Yeah, so they lasted well beyond their years. They did well there.
Well, they were beautiful early on when they get those white blossoms on them, and they have that perfect conical shape, but it didn't take long for them to get what Elwood calls, they call them Frankenstein trees, because their shape just goes totally out of shape. And then they start dying from the top down, like as you say.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask. Saw there was an open position to be filled this year. Is that a position that's been vacant for a while? And how does that? I know at one point you had talked about a lot of the service requests that had come in and the capacity issues there. Is this going to alleviate that, or is this a new position that'll help kind of alleviate some of those service issues, or is it just kind of filling one that just recently became vacant?
I think that position became vacant in August. We did a job posting and had very limited interest. So we decided to sort of do a limited duration. I think you can see on that, if you're looking at that, it says limited duration for one of the PMO guys who was a seasonal. So we're giving him an opportunity to learn the ropes and maybe apply for that position. But if he's not ready at the end of this term, it's a short term, it's going to end this late spring or summer. And then we'll reopen the position again for the tree trimmer. So yeah, we sort of have it filled with someone who's not really qualified to be a tree trimmer, but he's really good with operating machines. We use a lot of skid machines. He's really good with that. So it's been very helpful to the tree crew, but not necessarily a tree trimmer. So we're down a tree trimmer for sure. So yeah, we're hoping to fill that soon.
Thank you. Good question. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you so much, Mylan.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Let's move into our Parks and Natural Resources planning update. Patricia, I had a question right off the bat. Exciting about the bald eagles. I've been seeing them down at Minto, as you mentioned, hanging around. It's always fun. I was curious, how much does the city work with Salem Audubon for things like bird watching? I remember last year there was something, wasn't there, in terms of spotting the eagles and with a spotting scope?
Yeah, so our park ranger, Mike Zeker, is an avid ornithologist, amateur ornithologist. So he's very active in keeping an eye on the eagles and working with the Audubon Society. So like, yeah, last year they set up that viewing table. And then COVID hit and then the eagles decided they didn't want to nest after all. So they will probably do something sort of like that again. But you know, obviously it's going to be harder to do if you have to stay 6 feet apart.
Yeah. Have we ever thought about doing like an educational campaign with Audubon, maybe some temporary signs or something that talk about, you know, don't go down this trail, here's more about the eagles, and, you know, more information that they might be able to provide without the city having to do that?
Not that I know of. I mean, I know that they probably would be happy to help do things like that as far as signs and information, or at least, you know, maybe a QR code or something on our sign that directs them to the Audubon Society website.
Could be something fun to look into, and I'd be happy to reach out to them too and just see what they're thinking. But especially during COVID, we have to get creative.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Tim Johnson is the current president of the board, so he would be the person to probably talk to.
Okay, great. Anyone else have questions about the report? Well, lots of exciting stuff. I'll just elaborate real quick that we had the climate action plan meeting. We were working on the strategies this time, talking about especially transportation, but really a lot of different strategies. So I know that that website will be updated. Patricia, I don't think everything's on there yet, right? But I think soon more will be out. You should all see that and receive an update, but keep an eye out on that. And we have another meeting coming up soon.
Well, it is open on the website now for strategies. So if people want to go there, there's you can put your ideas in there. They haven't posted all the previous ideas. I mean, yesterday, I think they counted 240 different little idea sticky notes from all the different, all the different breakout groups. So there was quite a lot of creative thinking going on. But everybody could go now to the website, to the Climate Action Plan website, and put up your own ideas there as far as ways to reduce greenhouse gas and kind of build more resiliency into Salem.
Yeah, Mickey.
I had a question about the state climate action plan, or whatever they call it. I didn't know if the task force is kind of keeping in mind what some of the projections and plans were for the state, because I saw recently in an article that the Northwest states are behind their projections for reduced emissions for meeting their goals. And I didn't know if there was any link between what we're doing locally and the state.
Yeah, we're definitely, I mean, there's a lot going on in the state as far as climate action plan right now. So there's like the Global Warming Commission, and there's DLCD is working on it, and all the different state agencies have implementation plans now for how to reduce emissions. So we're trying to keep a tab on all of these moving parts. Obviously, a lot of the things are going to come from the state, and we will just, interconnect locally with those, because some of the things we can't manage, they're going to come down from higher up, even the feds maybe. Yeah, so we're trying to keep a track on those and just see where our actions fit in with those.
Okay, thank you.
Well, yeah, I think I brought something a year ago, whatever, just a little pet peeve was the gasoline and two-stroke backpack blowers and so forth that we use in the parks a lot. And those are incredibly polluting devices. So they do have comparable battery operated Of course, that's an expense, but still something to, it's a small step.
Yeah, I think actually that Jennifer is moving towards that. And I think Mylan, you've even switched over some things to electric as well. So that's what it's going to take, is kind of switching things to electric as much as possible.
Any other questions for Patricia? Well, Patricia, I don't know if you or Becky could fill in if anyone has any questions for that would normally be for Jennifer on the Parks Operations update. She gave a pretty good update, so I'm not sure if there's any specific questions. We can always have her email us with answers. Yeah, Mickey.
I always have questions. I know, but I was just curious. In the parts where it was talking about garbage, I noticed that there was still some of the garbage that had been collected that was waiting to go to Coffin Butte. Does all of our garbage that we pick up from the parks go to Coffin Butte? I was just curious.
I'm not sure. It seems like only some things would go to Coffin Butte and others would go to Covanta, the incinerator.
Okay.
I don't know if they sort certain things that can't go to Covanta. Becky, do you know?
No, that sounds familiar to me too. I think it's more of the harder to dispose of smartly. Like, I think some of it does go. I'm almost certain that it doesn't all go to Coffin Butte. Only some of the harder to dispose of properly items go down there.
Okay, I was just curious because I hadn't even thought about that, and I didn't know if there was a reason. So thank you.
Yeah.
I had one question, Becky, this might be for you. In terms of the holiday lightings, which were great, I was wondering if we ever considered leaving those up till New Year's just to give folks a little bit more time. I know some things like the zoo lights and stuff usually go through New Year's.
Yeah, that was discussed. That's a really good question. There were some folks on our staff that were kind of lobbying to have that stay up through the new year, and maybe, within that first week after New Year's, then be in the position where they start taking them down. But park staff and Jennifer had a conversation, and in this particular case this year, they wanted to start taking those down. I think they started on the 28th. And I don't know, I hate to try to speak for Jennifer and other staff, but part of it is I think they're just concerned with vandalism and damage and things like that. As it is, we have to hire security to try to keep an eye on those things. And so all of that costs additional funds. And so I think in being involved in some of those meetings going into it, that was kind of their thought with wanting to take it down. But I do know in the past, when we haven't had the larger display with like the tree lights, those would stay up till about the 10th or 15th of January, and then they'd come down. But because there's more out there, that was, I think the thought was just the cost that we'd incur keeping that up out there.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, while we have Becky, any other questions that folks have either for the parks operations or for the recreation reports? I wanted to toss out, Keith, were you going to ask one? All right. Paul? No. All right. I want to toss out two questions for you, Becky, kind of a new business thing as well. But as I was visiting the parks again recently, one is I was wondering if we've ever considered a holiday run. I know that the summer 5Ks are so successful, and I know that in other places I've done like Jingle All the Way 5Ks and things like that during the holidays. And I know with the displays downtown, it could be a really nice opportunity to run around that area. Is that something that was discussed, or is that something we could look at for next year?
Actually, it has been discussed, and there's been some interest. In fact, Melinda, who have presented before to you, she's one of our recreation coordinators and handles the stride runs that you're familiar with probably, that we put on the 5K, 10Ks. And she's always wanted to do a run, probably having it start and end in Riverfront, around the tree lighting, maybe the night of the tree lighting and the early, before it gets super dark. So that has been discussed. There has also been discussion. There's another organizer or business in town called Titanium Running. Yeah, it's with Jason Jacobson, and he is from the California area, but he moved up here a few years ago, and he's the one that actually has done the last couple years, well, not last year, of course, unfortunately, but prior to that, the run in October, kind of a marathon or a half marathon. And he'd actually talked about doing a jingle bell run, something like what you're talking about. So there has been some conversations about that. They just haven't come to fruition yet. And of course, this last year with COVID, that's why. But I am suspecting that hopefully we can get through the COVID things, and maybe by next November, December, that we can have something. Either the city can host it, or maybe Jason would be in a position where he would be hosting that. So, but no, that's a great idea. Something that's lacking right now in our community.
Well, let me know if I can do anything to help. I'd love to help if organizing that or volunteering however I can. I think that'd be a really fun thing to help put on.
Sure.
The other one I just want to throw out as a suggestion is, I don't know if you heard about the Willamette ornament hunt, the Willamette National Forest ornament hunt they did a couple years ago. I think they might have skipped it this year, where they would hide ornaments in the forest that you could find. And it made me wonder, just going down a long train of thought, what if you were to do an ornament hunt in Salem's 90 park properties? And if it could be sponsored by local business, and perhaps if you took it into like Ike Box or Isaac's, and you get maybe 10% coupon. And so then businesses could be pulling people in locally, and then it would give people a reason to get out to the parks. It's a very broad idea, but I figured I would throw it out now with 12 months to think about what it could look like, and if that would be something to consider or has been considered in the past.
So no, to my knowledge, that has not been considered in the past, but I love that idea. And there has been in the past some conversations about, well, there's different names for it, but different items, whether it be like a kindness rocks campaign or something like that, where there's different things, or even like a geocaching, those types of things in our park system, and encouraging people to get out into the parks and kind of look for different things. So as a whole, that idea on a broad scope has been discussed in the past. But I do definitely, I really like the idea of something like that around the holidays and ornaments and things like that. That's a time of year where, our park system isn't as, say, busy as it is in, June, July, and August kind of thing. So that's something I'll take back, and I'll talk with our recreation team and our park staff about it. And my guess is probably also need to talk with urban development, because they're the ones that have contacts with the businesses specifically in the downtown area. So I will take that back and talk to staff about it.
Yeah, well, let me know once again if I can help in any way. I mean, I was thinking about the small business Saturdays and everything. If there's any way to pull all of that together with our parks, it's always good. But all right, great.
Fantastic. Yes, thank you.
Anyone else have anything they wanted to throw out? I guess at this point, either for new business or for questions for Becky. Okay, I'm not hearing any. Any final comments in general, just before we wrap up? Okay, well, thank you, Becky. Thank you, Patricia. Our next meeting will be February 11th, and a couple of us will be working on that letter. So let's stay in touch via email, and Tony will ask for your help formatting and submitting that when the time comes. But other than that, I hope everyone has a great January, and Happy New Year once again. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dylan, and everyone. Bye-bye for everything.
Thanks, Mitch.
You
Thanks,
betcha.
Kimberly.
Don't
Kimberly,
forget to
let me know if you have any questions, okay? I'm not in tomorrow, but I'll be back in on Tuesday.
Don't forget to
Okay.
stop the
Great.
live stream.